Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to imagine this, just 60 seconds. Not an hour, not a day, not a week, just 1 minute. Do you know that in 1 minute, destinies can be altered? In 1 minute, doors can swing open that were locked for years. In 1 minute, heaven can invade your situation and release what you've been waiting for. You are not standing before a God who needs time. You are standing before a God who created time. And when you learn how to align your words with His will, what normally takes years can happen in just 24 hours. The power of a minute, let that settle in your spirit for a moment. We waste minutes every single day scrolling, talking, worrying, doing things that have no eternal value. Yet heaven tells us that just 60 seconds, surrendered, aligned, and spoken with authority, can unlock a supply that changes everything in our lives. Do you realize that 1 minute in the presence of God can outweigh 10 years of human effort? 1 moment, 1 prayer, 1 declaration, released in faith, can summon resources, cancel debts, and open doors you thought were permanently shut. Why? Because time is not your master. Time is God's servant. Time does not control your destiny. It only obeys the one who created it. When you align yourself with His word and release a prayer in faith, you are no longer operating under natural time. You step into kingdom time. And in kingdom time, a harvest can be commanded in 24 hours. Think about it in the natural. Seeds take months, even years to bear fruit. But when heaven is involved, the law of acceleration overrides the natural process. Suddenly, the seed becomes a tree, the prayer becomes provision, the cry becomes cash flow. You may have been struggling for years, building, working, hoping. But do you know that your struggle is not proof of God's delay? Sometimes your struggle is simply waiting for your words to authorize His release. He gave man dominion. And dominion means nothing happens on earth until earth gives heaven permission. Your prayer is that permission. Your words are that contract. Your faith is the signature on heaven's checkbook. And when you release it with conviction, with boldness, with absolute expectation, the atmosphere shifts. Money moves, resources rearrange, people are stirred, and miracles are dispatched on assignment. But the question is this: what are you doing with your minute? Do you spend it complaining, worrying, doubting, or do you spend it aligning, declaring, commanding? Because the truth is, every 60 seconds of your life is an opportunity. And 1 prayer, 1 focused moment can be the very key to unlock a 24-hour miracle. The power is not in the length of the prayer, but in the faith behind the prayer. The power is not in the volume of your words, but in the authority behind your words. And when you understand that heaven responds not to desperation, but to faith, you stop begging and start declaring. You stop hoping and start decreeing. You stop waiting for tomorrow and you claim today. So here is the mystery. What could happen if you truly dedicated 1 focused minute right now to unlock the resources of heaven? What if your next prayer was not just words, but a key that opens your financial destiny? What if the next 60 seconds became the bridge between your lack and your abundance? What if everything you've been waiting for is waiting on you to speak? And this leads us directly into the next dimension, where we discover how heaven responds, not in delay, but in divine acceleration. Divine acceleration, it is one of the greatest mysteries of the kingdom. You see, when God steps into a situation, He does not move at the pace of men. He does not consult your past. He does not calculate according to your resources. He does not measure by what the economy says. No, He moves at the speed of His word. And when His word collides with your faith, something supernatural happens. Things that were supposed to take 10 years can happen in 10 days. Processes that normally require seasons can be compressed into hours. And breakthroughs that seemed far away suddenly stand at your door. Think about it. Why would heaven accelerate a thing? Because purpose cannot wait. There are assignments connected to your life, destinies tied to your obedience, generations attached to your decisions. And when the timing of God aligns with the faith of man, delays are removed, resistance is broken, and acceleration begins. Have you not read that he can restore the years the locust has eaten? He is not bound by the time you lost. He is not limited by the mistakes you made. He redeems time. He compresses time. He overrides time so that what was lost in the past is delivered in your present. But here's the key. Heaven responds to your words. Not just any words, but words spoken with conviction, with authority, with expectation. Do you realize that every word you speak into prayer is a seed sown into the atmosphere? And when that seed meets the right conditions of faith, it germinates immediately. Heaven does not need years to process your prayer. Angels are not waiting for board meetings to approve your blessing. God speaks, creation obeys, and manifestation follows. The only question is, are you speaking words that authorize acceleration, or are you speaking words that authorize delay? Your prayer must match the speed of heaven, not in length, but in faith. A short, faith-filled declaration can release more than 1,000 fearful sentences. When you say, provision come forth, heaven hears. When you declare, doors open now, angels move. When you decree, wealth locate me, resources align. And what you thought was far suddenly becomes near. What you thought was impossible suddenly becomes reality. This is the mystery of divine acceleration. And yet, many of us pray, but we do not expect. We speak, but we do not decree. We ask, but we do not command. And heaven waits for expectation to meet declaration. Because when that union happens, the supernatural is unlocked. And what takes a lifetime without God can happen in 24 hours with him. So then, the question is this: what happens when you dare to believe that your words carry the same creative power as his? What happens when you align your voice with his promises? What happens when you step out of natural timing and into divine timing? This is where we uncover the next principle, 60 seconds that can shift your financial destiny forever. 60 seconds, just 1 minute. Do you realize how much power is hidden inside that small window of time? We often underestimate it. We think 1 minute is too short to matter. But heaven knows that 1 minute, properly invested, can shift the entire course of your life. 1 minute with God is not equal to 1 minute on your clock. 1 minute with God carries the weight of eternity. And when you understand that truth, you stop wasting time and you start using time as a key to unlock destiny. Think of it like this: your life is the sum total of moments. Not years, not decades, but moments. It only takes 1 moment for chains to break. It only takes 1 moment for the sick to be healed. It only takes 1 moment for poverty to be reversed. And when that moment is filled with prayer, with faith, with the right words, it becomes the womb of miracles. 60 seconds of true alignment with God can do what 60 years of labor cannot achieve. But why 60 seconds? Because heaven does not measure by duration, it measures by depth. God is not moved by how long you pray, he is moved by how much faith you carry when you pray. One focused, faith-filled declaration carries more weight than an hour of doubt-filled repetition. Do you hear that? It is not about the length, it is about the substance. 1 decree spoken with authority can command wealth, redirect resources, and release favor into your life. Imagine standing in your room, closing your eyes, and giving God just 1 minute of total focus. You silence the distractions, you silence the doubts, and in that single minute you declare his word over your life. In that single minute you command doors to open, contracts to be signed, finances to be released. Do you know what happens? Heaven records it. Angels are dispatched. The atmosphere shifts. And while you are still standing in that very spot, heaven is already setting things in motion on your behalf. And here is the mystery. You don't need to wait for tomorrow. You don't need to wait for next week. The Bible is full of moments where God moved instantly. The blind received sight immediately. The lame walked immediately. The storm calmed immediately. Why then would you think your provision requires delay? Why would you believe your financial release cannot happen in 24 hours? It is because your mind has been trained to expect delay, but your spirit has been designed to command acceleration. So let me ask you, what will you do with your next 60 seconds? Will you waste it, or will you turn it into a seed for your future? Because the truth is, your breakthrough is never in the hours you spend worrying. It is in the seconds you spend declaring. And when you finally learn to value those 60 seconds, you unlock a destiny that no man can close. Which brings us to the next reality, the mystery of immediate release and why God never truly delays. The mystery of immediate release. This is where the supernatural collides with your faith. Many people live under the illusion that God is slow, that heaven needs time to think, to plan, to decide. But hear me, delay is not in God, delay is in us. Heaven does not operate on hesitation. Heaven responds the moment faith is activated. When you pray in alignment with His will, the answer is released instantly. Not tomorrow, not next week, instantly. The moment you speak it, heaven dispatches it. The question is never about God's speed. The question is about our capacity to receive. Think of Daniel. The moment he prayed, the angel said, "Your words were heard and I was sent." Not after 10 days, not after 21 days. The answer was sent immediately. The delay was not in heaven, it was in the atmosphere, in resistance, in opposition. And the same is true for you today. The instant you release a word of faith, heaven releases the provision. The breakthrough is already sent. The supply is already on its way. But if you focus only on what your eyes can see, you will assume nothing has happened. That is why many stop praying too soon, because they confuse unseen battles with unanswered prayers. But listen carefully, the release of heaven is immediate. God does not withhold what He has already promised. He does not hold back what He has already given in Christ. The moment you believe, it becomes yours. The moment you declare, it is set in motion. The moment you ask in faith, the answer is dispatched. The delay you feel is only the time it takes for the invisible to become visible. But never mistake that for hesitation from God. Heaven responds faster than light, faster than thought, faster than you can imagine. So why do we sometimes feel as though the promise takes years? Because there are spiritual forces that resist manifestation. There are systems, structures, and strongholds that attempt to block what heaven has already released. That's why persistence in prayer is not about persuading God. It's about enforcing what He already sent. You are not convincing Him to answer. You are standing in authority to claim what is already yours. That is the mystery. And here's where the power of your words comes in. When you keep declaring, when you keep standing, when you keep aligning your faith with His word, you keep the flow open. You dismantle resistance. You reinforce heaven's command. You silence the opposition. And then suddenly what was held up is released. What was resisted is manifested. What was delayed in the natural is accelerated in the spirit. So the real question is, are you prepared to believe that your miracle has already been released? Are you willing to act? Not as one waiting for God to move, but as one enforcing what God has already done. Because the moment you shift that perspective, everything changes. And this leads us into the next revelation, understanding how words don't just request wealth, they create it. Words that create wealth pause and let that truth sink in. Do you realize that money is not the starting point of wealth? Wealth begins with words. Before there was silver, before there was gold, before there was land, before there were nations, there was a word. The entire universe was created by the spoken word of God. Let there be. And there was. Creation did not appear because God thought it silently. Creation appeared because God spoke it audibly. Words carry the DNA of creation. Words carry the blueprint of manifestation. And if his words carry power to create worlds, then your words, made in his image, carry power to create wealth. Many people misunderstand money. They chase it, they run after it, they work day and night for it. But money is not attracted by labor alone. Money is attracted by words. The atmosphere around you responds to what you declare. Resources align with the language you release. Contracts, clients, ideas, and opportunities are magnetized to the sound of your faith. Have you noticed how some people, no matter where they go, doors open? It's not luck, it's language. They speak possibility, they declare increase, they command favor. And what they say, they eventually see. Your words are seeds. Every declaration you make is sowing into the soil of your future. When you speak lack, you plant lack. When you speak delay, you plant delay. When you speak abundance, you plant abundance. And every seed carries a harvest. That is why you must guard your tongue. The enemy knows he cannot steal what God has given you. So he tricks you into canceling it with your own words. You can pray for provision and then cancel it by complaining. You can declare favor and then erase it by speaking doubt. That is why consistency of confession is critical. What you keep saying, you will eventually keep seeing. So ask yourself, what language are you speaking over your life? Do your words sound like heaven, or do they echo fear? Are you speaking the language of lack or the language of abundance? Because every time you open your mouth, you are either creating a world you desire or reinforcing a world you despise. Wealth is not just earned, wealth is spoken. The very atmosphere around you is waiting for instruction, waiting for a command, waiting for the words that carry faith. And here's the secret: you don't have to see wealth before you speak it. You don't have to touch it before you declare it. You speak it until you see it. You decree it until it manifests. Faith calls those things that are not as though they already were. That is how the invisible becomes visible. That is how prayer produces provision. That is how words create wealth. So then, if your tongue is the factory of your future, what happens when your words become prayer? What happens when your decrees align with heaven's economy? What happens when you stop speaking lack and start commanding resources? This ushers us into the next dimension, understanding the kind of prayer that doesn't just ask for resources, but commands them to appear within 24 hours. Prayer that commands resources in one day. Think about that for a moment. Most people pray as if they are begging, as if they are pleading for God to notice them. But true prayer is not begging. True prayer is commanding, not commanding God, but commanding the resources that He has already placed under your authority. You see, heaven has already decided your provision. The kingdom has already secured your supply. But until you speak with authority, those resources remain dormant, waiting for a voice to call them forth. Remember, prayer is not just communication with God, it is legislation on earth. It is the act of enforcing heaven's will in your life and in your environment. That is why Jesus did not tell us to ask the mountain politely. He told us to speak to the mountain. He told us to command it to move, because in the spirit realm, nothing shifts until a voice of authority is released. And if a mountain can move at your command, then surely money, opportunities, and resources can obey your voice as well. But here is the key. Prayer is not about the length of time, but the weight of authority. You can spend hours in fear and accomplish nothing, or you can spend 60 seconds in faith and command everything. The prayer that produces in 24 hours is the prayer that is spoken with conviction, clarity, and confidence. It does not waver. It does not hesitate. It does not wonder if God will answer. It knows the answer is already released, and so it speaks as one enforcing a decree, not as one hoping for a chance. Think about it like this. When a king makes a decree, He does not beg his servants to obey. He speaks, and it is done. Why? Because his word carries authority. You too are a king in the kingdom. Your prayer is not a wish, it is a decree. And when you decree, the earth responds. When you decree, heaven backs it up. When you decree, resources are commanded to locate you within the appointed time. And in the realm of faith, that appointed time can be today. It can be within 24 hours. So let me ask you, what kind of words are you speaking in your prayer? Are you asking for what you already have? Or are you commanding what has already been promised? Because once you shift your perspective, once you begin to pray as one who knows their authority, you will see results manifest faster than you ever imagined. You will no longer pray for survival, you will pray for supply. You will no longer pray with uncertainty, you will pray with dominion. And here lies the mystery. What happens when faith and action meet in prayer? What happens when the words you command are reinforced by steps you take? What happens when prayer moves from your lips into your lifestyle? This takes us directly into the next principle, faith in action, the 1-minute key that unlocks breakthrough. Faith in action, this is where prayer becomes more than words, where belief is proven by movement. Too many people pray powerful prayers, yet remain paralyzed in their behavior. They speak abundance, but live in fear. They declare wealth, but walk in doubt. They ask God for doors, yet never move toward the hallway. But faith without action is not faith, it is theory. Real faith always produces movement. Real faith always demands a step. And when your faith is put into action, that 1 minute of prayer can unlock a lifetime of breakthrough. Do you remember the woman with the issue of blood? She could have prayed quietly in her heart. She could have believed silently from a distance, but she did more than believe. She moved. She pushed through the crowd. She stretched her hand, and she touched the hem of his garment. Her faith was not only spoken, it was acted out. And in that single moment, she received what doctors had denied her for years. That is the power of faith in action. The same principle applies to your finances. You can pray for provision, but faith in action means you also prepare for it. You can pray for opportunities, but faith in action means you position yourself to seize them. You can pray for doors, but faith in action means you walk toward them, expecting them to open. You see, prayer sets things in motion, but your actions create alignment. Prayer releases the blessing, but your movement makes space for its manifestation. Without action, prayer remains in the invisible. With action, prayer manifests in the visible. Think about it. If you truly believe money is coming within 24 hours, would you not prepare a place to receive it? If you truly believe God is sending favor, would you not dress, speak, and act like favor is already upon you? That is the posture of faith. You don't wait to see before you believe. You believe and then behave accordingly. And when your behavior matches your belief, the supernatural accelerates. But here is where most people miss it. They pray and wait as if prayer is the end of the process. Prayer was never designed to end the process. Prayer was designed to begin it. Prayer is ignition, but action is motion. Prayer lights the fire, but action fans the flame. And together they produce results that no man can deny. That is why the scripture says, faith without works is dead, because faith that does not move is faith that cannot manifest. So then, the challenge is clear. What step will you take after your next prayer? What move will you make that proves you believe what you declared? Because when heaven sees faith in action, it releases resources without hesitation. And when earth sees faith in action, it recognizes authority and response, which leads us into the next truth, how spoken words, when acted upon, transform from invisible decrees into visible wealth right before your very eyes. From spoken word to seen wealth in 24 hours. That is not fantasy, that is kingdom reality. Everything you see in this world began first as something spoken. The earth itself was born when God said, "Let there be." Notice, he did not form it with his hands, he framed it with his words. And that same principle is alive in you today. You have the power to move resources, to call forth opportunities, to summon wealth by the authority of your tongue. The spoken word is the seed, but manifestation is the harvest. Yet here is the mystery. Many people stop at the seed. They speak once, then give up. They declare in the morning, but cancel it by the afternoon with doubt and negativity. You cannot plant a seed and then dig it up every few hours to see if it is growing. Now the spoken word must be consistent. It must be watered with faith, reinforced with expectation, and protected from contradiction. Every time you open your mouth in alignment with God's promises, you are building an invisible framework around your life. And soon, what was invisible begins to take shape. Think of Elijah on Mount Carmel. He declared rain when the sky was clear. He spoke abundance when there was no cloud. And though the servant saw nothing, Elijah kept speaking, kept believing, kept declaring. And suddenly a small cloud appeared, from spoken word to seen manifestation. That is how wealth comes, not by doubting the unseen, but by decreeing until it appears. But do not miss this truth. Wealth is not just money. Wealth is everything you need to fulfill your assignment. It is wisdom, it is influence, it is opportunities, it is people divinely connected to your destiny. And all of that responds to words. Words spoken with authority create movement in the spirit. They send signals into the atmosphere that draw what belongs to you. Have you noticed how people of vision always attract resources? It is because their language carries life. They speak with conviction. They call things forth as though they already are. And eventually, what they keep saying, they start seeing. So let me ask you, what words have you been speaking over your finances? What language have you been using in your home, over your children, in your business? Because your life today is the product of yesterday's words. If you want to change tomorrow, you must change what you say today. Your mouth is not just an organ of speech, it is the pen of destiny. And the moment you realize that, you will stop using it carelessly. But here is the beauty of it all. You don't need a year for manifestation. You don't even need a month. When your words are aligned, when your faith is active, when your expectation is high, wealth can move into your hands within 24 hours. From invisible decree to visible supply, from what you said to what you see. And this brings us directly into the next dimension, the spiritual law of sudden supply, and why heaven is never late in delivering what is already yours. The spiritual law of sudden supply, what does that mean? It means that heaven has systems, heaven has laws, heaven has principles that govern how resources are released. And when you understand these laws, you realize that increase is not random, favor is not coincidence, provision is not luck. No, there are divine laws that guarantee supply, and one of those laws is the principle of sudden manifestation. Suddenly the door opens. Suddenly the phone call comes. Suddenly the opportunity appears. Suddenly the resources are released. Do you remember the children of Israel? For 400 years, they were in slavery, working, building, yet owning nothing. But when the night of deliverance came, it didn't take 4 more years for their wealth transfer. No, in one night, suddenly, they walked out of Egypt with silver and gold in their hands. They didn't have to negotiate. They didn't have to beg. They didn't have to wait. The law of sudden supply was activated, and wealth shifted in 24 hours. That same law still governs your life today. But here is the challenge. We live in a world that has trained us to expect process. We are taught that everything must take years, that wealth must be gradual, that breakthrough must be delayed. And while process has its place, you must also know that heaven specializes in sudden release. One divine encounter can do more than a decade of labor. One word from God can accomplish what a lifetime of effort could not achieve. That is why you must never limit God to your calendar. What you think will take months, He can complete in a moment. What you thought would take years, He can release in a day. But sudden supply does not happen by accident. It happens when you align your faith with His word. It happens when your declaration meets His timing. It happens when your obedience positions you for overflow. That's why many people miss it. They are waiting for slow provision when heaven has already scheduled sudden provision. And because they expect delay, they never prepare for acceleration. Let me tell you, expectation is preparation. If you believe for sudden supply, you must be ready to receive it at any moment. So let me ask you, are you living prepared for sudden blessing? Or are you waiting passively, hoping it might come someday? Because the truth is, heaven is waiting for your expectation to match its supply. The law of sudden supply is always in operation, but it responds to faith, to declaration, to readiness. And when you posture yourself correctly, what seemed impossible yesterday becomes a reality today, which leads us to the next great key, how to unlock God's economy with the prayer of power, so that what has been delayed in the natural is released instantly in the spirit. Unlocking God's economy with the prayer of power. Now this is where everything comes together. You see, there are two economies operating in this world. One is the natural economy controlled by banks, systems, governments, and markets. The other is God's economy governed by faith, obedience, and the unshakable word of the King. In the natural economy, men say you must qualify, you must earn, you must strive. But in God's economy, you access provision by prayer, you activate wealth by faith, you unlock resources with your words. The prayer of power is the bridge that transfers you from man's limitations into heaven's abundance. Think about it. When Jesus fed the 5,000, there was no money, no catering, no supply chain. In the natural, it was impossible. But He lifted what was in His hands, spoke a prayer of power, and heaven's economy took over. What was not enough suddenly became more than enough. That is what happens when the prayer of power is released. It multiplies, it accelerates, it attracts, it bypasses natural systems and draws directly from the resources of heaven. But here is the key. This prayer is not casual. It is not passive, it is not weak, it is intentional. It is spoken with authority, backed by faith, aligned with God's promises. The prayer of power does not ask if God can do it. It declares that God has already done it. It does not beg, it enforces. It does not hope, it commands. That is why the prayer of power produces results that ordinary prayers cannot. It is the prayer that pulls tomorrow's provision into today. It is the prayer that calls what is unseen into manifestation. It is the prayer that demands heaven's economy to override earth's limitations. And let me tell you something. The prayer of power is not reserved for a select few. It belongs to every believer who dares to believe. It belongs to the one who knows their authority. It belongs to the one who refuses to bow to fear, lack, or delay. The moment you open your mouth and release the word of God with boldness, you shift economies. The world may say recession, but you will walk in provision. The system may say impossible, but you will live in overflow. Because God's economy does not bow to man's reports. God's economy only responds to faith-filled words. So the question now is, are you ready to unlock it? Are you ready to stop living by man's economy and start walking in God's economy? Are you ready to pray, not as a beggar, but as a ruler? Because the moment you release the prayer of power, heaven responds, and earth cannot resist. And this is where I leave you with this truth. Your words carry more weight than your wallet. Your faith holds more power than your effort. Your prayer can accomplish more in 1 minute than your labor in 1 year. So rise up, speak boldly, declare with authority, command resources to come, call opportunities to manifest, decree wealth to flow. For when you unlock God's economy with the prayer of power, lack loses its grip, delay surrenders its hold, and provision arrives right on time. This is your moment. This is your season. This is your hour. Lift your voice, pray the prayer of power, and watch heaven release what is already yours.